최고!
Hello once again, my chicketies. Game & Chick is back once again with the biggest and longest review I've ever done. Before we get started into this behemoth, I'd like to give a big thank you to Square-Enix for providing me with a review copy of Endwalker in order to make this review possible. Thank you so much. And so now with that having been said, let's go! Final Fantasy XIV is a widely successful MMORPG that is developed and published by Square-Enix. But it wasn't always that way. Far from it. Because long before A Realm was reborn, way before we went heavensward, there was a little game called Final Fantasy XIV 1.0. By now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this version of the game. It's notorious not only for how bad it is, but also for the large amount of damage that the game itself did not only to Square-Enix as a company, but the Final Fantasy brand as well, nearly killing it. Before I go any further, I have to let you know that this review is going to be a tad bit different than how I normally do things, at least early on, since I'll be focusing a lot on story recaps. Even though the title here says Endwalker, I will not be covering this title till the very end, and instead, I'm going to take on a personal monumental task of giving my thoughts and opinions on not only the 1.0 version of Final Fantasy XIV, but all expansions from A Realm Reborn to its conclusion with Endwalker. I could easily review Endwalker and be done with it, but as a legacy player since the 1.0 days, I want to give my thoughts and insights on what it was like to experience the game in that state and its end. If that doesn't interest you, that's super okay, and it's perfectly fine to skip to the very end and get my thoughts on Endwalker and the conclusion to this 10-year-old story. But for the people that stick with me, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy it. Now let's get to it. Version 1.0. Following the success of Square-Enix's other MMO title Final Fantasy XI, Square-Enix decided it was high time to put their skills to the test and release another MMO on the market that can not only top World of Warcraft, a title which they're always compared to with Final Fantasy XI, but also gain control of the MMO market as a whole. But little did they know that history would not be on their side.
Are you sure about that?
Thinking back on my memories of this game, I remember the wait for this title being absolute torture due to the fact that I had just come off of playing their other MMO Final Fantasy XI for a decade, and all I wanted was a Final Fantasy XI with better graphics. Yes, I know, that's very basic, but hey, if it works, don't break it and then try to fix it, as Square-Enix were about to learn, the very hard way. On September 30th, 2010, the world was greeted to this new and long-awaited MMO, and right from the start, we all knew something was terribly wrong. Sure, the game looked pretty enough. Hell, it was the best-looking MMO on the market, no competition. But that's about one of the only positives we all had. When the game wasn't running like a complete slog on your PC, players were having trouble figuring out the game's mechanics, where to go, how to find your objectives. How do you add friends? How do you check your gear? How to group up in order to party? Or wonder if we had to walk everywhere? Well, we soon found out the answer to all those questions, but not before getting a gigantic headache for our efforts. Set in the land of Eorzea during the 6th Astral Era, a time of peace, you play as a young adventurer who is thrusted into a wide tale due to gifts bestowed upon you and circumstance. As you started your game, you were able to select between 3 of the main starting cities. Limsa Lominsa? A sight for me sore eyes! Had to do it, sorry.
Limsa Lominsa! A sight for me sore eyes!
Gridania, and my home of Ul'dah. Each starter city having their own unique opening and setting in which your adventure will begin. Well, after you pick a character race, that is. Just don't pick a Lalafell, they're evil little potatoes. Upon beginning your adventure, if you should start in Ul'dah, you will be greeted to a big parade filled with dancers and laughter. An imprisoned Gubu breaks free from his shackles and lays waste to the parade and the civilians in his way. It is then up to you and another mysterious adventurer named Thancred to fend off this beast and get people to safety. Shortly after this, you get a headache and a strange vision of fire falling down from the sky onto Eorzea. What the heck could this mean, you wonder? But before that is answered, your character passes out from the vision they've seen. After collapsing and waking up a bit confused, you're now greeted by a woman named Minfilia. You have no clue who she is, but she knows you. Curious. Curious indeed. But just as the story is getting very interesting...
Stop right there, criminal scum!
You can't advance any further for the time being. Why is that? Welp, my good adventurer, that's because you just hit the wall of the best feature of any game ever made. The fatigue system. Oh my god, this thing. Legacy players know all about this nightmare of a system, but for people who don't, let me just fill you in real quick. So everyone knows that in an MMO, in order to level up your character, you need to gain a specific amount of EXP with the class in order to get stronger, right? Overall, that is true here, with being able to complete leaves, which are a set amount of quests you're able to activate in order to complete specific objectives tied to that area, grind out experience by killing enemy mobs, do main story missions to gain more experience, blah blah, you get it. But what if I were to tell you that wanting to play the game more and enjoy the world, story, or gameplay was actually frowned upon by the game's creators, and instead that behavior is punished? You'd think I'm as crazy looking as someone who walked by Tidus and Yuna, watching them cringe and laugh at the top of their lungs for no reason, but it's true.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Each class has a set limit of experience points that you can earn before putting on a penalty system. And once you hit that threshold set in place, you're no longer able to gain the points needed to level up that class. So instead of being able to play a class like Gladiator, Pugilist, or something that you want to play as, you're forced to switch or not play at all. No joke. It's just like Angry Video Game Nerd says,
What were they thinking?
back then, we were actively told that this was a good thing, not a bad thing. Like they were harnessing their inner WWE DDP performance. Players that would choose not to play the game would be rewarded with higher experience point counts, which now in the game is known as resting experience. Rewarded for not playing the game. Good lord. How did we not see the writing on the wall when they told us that? Even they knew at the time that we shouldn't be playing this hot mess. If that was the only major problem with the game, we probably would have endured easier. I mean, at the time, I liked playing Gladiator and Pugilist, so I didn't mind too much to switch every now and then. But it was the plethora of other game hazards that started to wane my insanity. The game was extremely sluggish at times, with environments such as potted plants having more pixels in it than the actual character models, which tore up people's PCs with the amount of resources used. The UI being a complete mess, with the game not showing you where your quest location is, where to find leaves, not being able to see when your friends are online that you have already added, etc. In addition to the UI woes, our pain still wasn't complete. There were still quite a few major problems left, but I'm getting a headache just going through these here, so let's jump back into the narrative and then circle back around to the gameplay as we move along and wrap things up. After waking up, seeking out and speaking to Minfilia, you learn that you are what is known as an Echo Bearer, just like her, who are a selected few chosen by Hydaelyn herself, to have the ability to see the past events of people around you, and to also have the protection of light that stops all primals from being able to temper your soul and take over your mind. From here on, you venture with fellow Scion companions, Thancred, Ida, Y'shtola, and Papalimo, as you investigate primal tempering by the beast tribes that aim to summon the primal known as Ifrit, make a stand against the villainous Gaius, who aims to bring forth the 7th Umbral Calamity, meet the wise Luisfa, learn how to stop the incoming calamity, befriend the Garlean defector Cid, a master engineer, and unite the main 3 nations of Eorzea as one, to combat the inevitable war by the Empire's army that will soon be at their doorstep. To be honest, everyone is kind of dumb. I mean, the Empire literally conquered Alamigo and have held it for 20 years. What the heck did you think was gonna happen by letting them roam free? But anyways, moving on. As you're being sucked into the story and its narrative, once again, you're reminded that the developers didn't want you to have fun. You see a little ledge that you want to get around. Just jump over it. Go ahead, try it. Oh wait, that's right, you can't. Yup, it's true. At this point in the game, the concept of pressing the spacebar to jump was a foreign concept and was not implemented into the game. If that didn't take the cake, those same environments that you wish to jump around in, at least in Gridania's Black Shroud Zone, their maps were copy and pasted. I'm not ribbing ya. It's true. Every area is the same map but flipped to make it seem new. I'm looking at you, Far Cry 4 and Primal. Hey now, that's fine, no worries. The maps are pretty large. I'll just keep occupied with some more monster killing. Oh wait, you can't do that. You hit your experience cap. Dang it. Oh well, I guess I'll use an Aether Crystal to teleport myself back to Gridania then. Oops, sorry, you ran out of your limited amount of anima that allows you to teleport. Crap. Well, last resort then. Just summon or call your chocobo to help you out. Oh yeah, you can't, as there wasn't a mount system even in place at the game's launch. Hey, not everything was bad. I mean, they did actually improve class changing in this game. I'm not even being sarcastic this time either. In Final Fantasy XI, in order to change your job, you needed to run back to find a Mog house and then select which sub-job and main job you wanted to switch manually. But here, it's as simple as selecting the class weapon and poof, you're that job. Perfect. Guess that means you can just go buy your desired gear now, right? And then be on your way? Oh dang, you're so silly. Sounds like you had more Mako poisoning than Cloud Strife. Sadly, this feature was broken as well, with no market board or auction house being available, and instead relying upon a player-based economy that involved finding what you want by manually clicking every single person near you to see if they happen to be selling what you need. Let me pop another Tylenol. Be right back. Once ushered back into the storyline, after having just learned that while Gaius was indeed a threat to the realm, the real threat was a man named Nail von Darnus. The vision you saw earlier? It is now set to come to fruition, as Nail is planning on summoning the great meteor Dolomud in order to bring upon the 7th Umbral Calamity. With the advice of Louiswa himself, you set off to put a stop to him from completing his summon, and there's very little time to spare. With each passing month, yes, this all happened in real time, the meteor gets closer and closer and enlarges in the sky. Upon Nail's defeat, you see that your victory meant absolutely nothing. Even though he was a beacon of the meteor, it was too late. During this time, Gaius and his army are now in full-fledged war against the allied nations in one final epic battle for the fate of Eorzea. But with one dramatic boom, Dolomud explodes, and out comes the enraged primal known as Bahamut. Raining fire and hell down on Earth, Louiswa and the Scions attempt to pray to the 12 to lock away Bahamut for good. But alas, it is not enough. The spell fails, and there is nothing to be done, and the nation leaders watch in horror. Saddened and defeated, Louiswa knows what must be done. Save as many adventurers as he can. So with the last of his magic, he sends our heroes and the warriors of light away, and smiles at death's embrace, thus bringing an end to 1.0 and ushering in a new world. A realm now reborn. Verdict: bad.